Okay, our first subtitle is Manifest Destiny. First, let's get ourselves a definition of manifest destiny. It's the belief that expansion of the U.S. throughout the American continents was justified and inevitable and granted by God. This means that America thinks that they are meant to take over all of the land, especially to the west, out to the Pacific Ocean. But as we'll see moving forward, it's not only to the west, but also expanded to North and South America, and even, think they can take over Canada and places like that as well. They said at the time, this continent was intended by Providence as a vast theater on which to work out the grand experiment of Republican government under the auspices of the Anglo-Saxon race. So they think they should be expanding not only to the West Coast, but even taking over possibly Canada and Mexico. They also say, we, the American people, are the most independent, intelligent, moral, and happy people on the face of the earth. And so they thought that meant that they should spread everywhere. So the American attitude here is that all lands to the west are theirs to take. And they start moving farther and farther west during this period. We've already seen the start of that out to about Missouri area, but we're going to push even further at this time and post-Jackson now. So this is important, especially for the South. The South needs to spread slavery to more lands in order to survive. We've talked about that idea before in class, that the South is worried about maintaining that balance between free states and southern states, the slave states. So they think they need to extend it further and further, gain more and more slave states in order to maintain that edge over the North and prevent the North from being able to eliminate slavery. So speculators and squatters are the ones who are really going to lead that charge out to the west. But they're moving mostly to the west because they have the 49th parallel in the north and Mexico in the south. And so those two limitations force them to move farther and farther west because they can't go north or south. So that's really their only option, unless they're, of course, going to fight some wars and take over some extra land. So this leads to some incredible internal migration in America. And these pioneers, as we call them, the pioneers were those who are among the first to enter and settle a region, kind of paving the way for others to follow in the future. These are very different than a lot of the colonists that we saw arriving way back towards the beginning of our course. A lot of the colonists that we saw were not actually that experienced, and we saw a lot of difficulties, especially in areas like Jamestown right there in the beginning. These pioneers, though, they're different. Most are experienced farmers and are ready for the challenges, the various challenges that they are going to face out in the West. And many of the European immigrants who head west had also farmed in Europe as well. And they're also more experienced, as we said, than the original colonists. So they had knowledge of American farming and knowledge of survival that they would need. There were some in America that did oppose this expansion into the West, mostly because they were worried about the violence that would follow, either violence to groups that were already existing, but more commonly because the West tended to be a more lawless place. So we've all seen this kind of Western movies, the outlaws and the sheriffs. That's not necessarily true, but it was true that there was a lot of gambling out in the West and not a lot of the rule of law expanding into those Western territories for quite a while after people moved in there. And so people were worried about the moral impact that this expansion would have as well.